Welcome, everybody. I'm Nancy Vandell, Chair of the NCAC Bylaws Subcommittee. We're renaming ourselves, and I call the meeting to order at 9:30. So could we start with introductions and conflict of interest declarations?
Michael Beachley, no conflicts.
Susan Schomburg, no conflicts.
Tom
Sipe, no conflicts.
Pat Angelo, no conflicts.
And Nancy Vandell, none that I know of. Welcome to Liz. Wow, we're getting quite the group today. Liz and Helene, is that how you pronounce your name? Or Rand is coming back in, I guess. And Hillary, wow. Okay, so for all of you who are visiting, the documents can be found by clicking on the link for the NCAC Bylaws Committee meeting for today. Is there anyone who is having any trouble finding our documents that we'll be going through? We'll be showing them on the screen too, but this way you can actually look at them yourself if you wish. Okay. So we have quite an extensive agenda. We've had a very busy time of it. So before we get to the approval of the minutes, I just want to let people know that we may end up running over. We will try hard not to, but rather than set the time for 2 hours to begin with, the committee has preferred that we extend the time if necessary, and we will try to avoid that. So did everybody have a chance to get to look at the minutes that that Michael has provided us? Okay, were there any comments, any corrections, additions to the minutes? Okay, the minutes are approved as provided. Thank you very much, Michael, for your work on that. Okay, for my report, I want to welcome all of the guests. I want to introduce Mark Everett, our NCAC chairman, who is chairperson, who has joined us today. And so, hi, Mark, welcome. And we have Rand Koch, the previous NCAC chair and current chair of the Community Plan Committee. I'm probably not calling that the correct name. And then Hillary Gibson, Helene Koch, Liz Vitale, Barbara Triplett, and Alex. Is this Alex, our co-chair? I mean, our VP?
That would be incorrect.
That would be incorrect.
I am Alex the elder.
Okay.
And that's Alex the younger.
Okay. Could you please say your last name?
Sure.
For the record. Sifford. Thank you. Welcome, Alex Sifford.
S-I-F-F-O-R-D. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And I'm here just interested in your map.
Okay. We will be getting to that later, and we're not going to be spending a lot of time on the map, but we will definitely spend some. We're definitely not making any motions on that today, but we're still waiting on some information that we'll talk about. Oh, and Alex Clark is here. So welcome, Alex Clark, too. Okay. So my report, Bill Miller is absent today due to a family medical issue, but he has been very busy with us. I still have not received an update from Sarah Absher. I'm guessing she has been extremely busy with the weather conditions that have been happening in the Nescoin and Tillamook County area. So we have some things that are waiting on her, and hopefully we'll have something in 2 weeks. Tom was a hit at the Community Plan Subcommittee meeting. So thank you.
I wasn't hit, so I wasn't
hit, no, but you were a hit. So it's great that they are looking at some of the things that we've developed for our bylaws committee, mainly due to Tom's efforts. And it sounds like he will be working with them as well. We've had lots of progress with our teams. We'll be going through the project plan again a little bit later in the meeting, but we have teams of 1 to 2 people as allowed by Oregon Public Meeting Law to look at our various bylaws articles and make recommendations to the full committee. So a lot of those reports are coming today. I just want to give an update because I've had some questions about that, about what our plans are going forward with this. And once we do this initial look, I don't expect that we'll necessarily approve any of these actual articles today, although we might if they're really simple and we don't get any pushback and people like them. And when I say approval, I mean recommendations then to go to the membership and to the board. What we will be presenting briefly some things to the new, the first ever that I know of, executive committee meeting that's being held on January 23rd via Zoom, and it's a public meeting, so everybody is welcome to come. But it's something our committee had recommended, and the board is trying it, which we really appreciate. It allows for planning that can be done for a general meeting, and also just to be able to talk in more depth about things the committees are doing and that kind of thing. So we'll actually talk about the executive board's article for the bylaws that we're proposing. So we'll be presenting some on our bylaws work at that meeting.
What time is
and
that
then
meeting?
I don't have that handy. Does somebody else on the board know? I've got it on my calendar somewhere, but 23rd, it is.
It should be
Not
on the
on my
calendar,
calendar.
so, I mean,
Yeah,
we can look it
it's-
up.
If you go to the website, yeah, thank you.
It's 7.
Somebody could do that.
7
7?
o'clock. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you,
on the
Mark.
20
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So, and that will be a public meeting as well. So the reason for it is that under Oregon public meeting law, it just becomes very time consuming and difficult to coordinate with people one-on-one and be able to make any kind of decisions or plans or anything. So it allows the committee to talk and still for the public to be there and be able to add their comments at the end of the meeting. And then what we plan to do is we get our recommendations together. We'll be presenting at the next full committee meeting, NCAC committee meeting in February, more briefly, but then we're planning to hold a series of workshops that Tom suggests we call feedback sessions, which makes sense, to be able to discuss the bylaws amendments more informally with either one or two, depending on how complex they are, articles being discussed at any one of those feedback sessions. So that'll be a time when people can just more informally give us and we can present what we're thinking, why we're thinking it, and members of the NCAC can provide their input more informally. Once we have that, then we will go back and make more formal proposals for the bylaws, and we are hoping to have everything ready by the April NCAC meeting for a vote. We'll see how it goes. We have another meeting in June, but we're aiming for April. Once the new bylaws are approved, then we will, if we have time still before the end of the year, then we'll look at the policies and procedures to have a little bit more detail. So does anyone on the committee have any discussion about that process? Any concerns? Okay, so hearing none, sounds like that's a good way to start. So an update on the bylaws committee webpage. We are going to talk about well, we're still waiting on Sarah to hear more formally about the subcommittee having a blog where we can all be talking through a blog, but that the public would be able to, the membership would be able to view. And we're hearing informally that that's been nixed by the county council, but we have not been able to talk with her directly about that. We haven't heard any reasons. So in the meantime, we are all spending a lot of time talking one-on-one and being able to have things somewhat put together for our meetings here. Are there any questions about that? Well, there's nothing to say yet, so let's just move on. Now we have the public comment form, and we do have an update on that that's brief. So I'm going to attempt to share the screen here.
We should add that this is the format we intend to publish once we get something that people can comment on. We're not at that point yet.
Right. And before we get to that, actually, let me just share this is the same screen you guys would be seeing. So let me just share our agenda for those who haven't looked at it. So we have the public comment form, and then we're going to get into the meat of the meeting, which is the article reviews. And we've had a lot of proposals coming up in various stages of readiness to go through. Then have a quick review and update of the project plan, public comment, and then summarize the meeting and action items. And we noticed that we may need to extend the meeting as well. Okay. So let me now go back. And we did the minutes, comment form. So Tom, take it away. You're muted, Tom.
I'm muted. Hopefully not too much background noise. And as I mentioned, this is a form that we intend to use as a way of organizing comments on our draft. Once we get the drafts to the point where they can be commented on, because right now they're pretty much of a flux, we'll have a formal way of recording everyone's comment. Hopefully this is all self-explanatory. This is a PDF, which is actually a fillable form. So people can actually just type into this and save it a very different name and then submit that. That is a drop-down menu. Okay. I'm not going to bore you by reading the text.
Yeah.
I recommend that you read that on your own, because I probably won't read it very well, although I wrote it. Anyway, the first section is a drop-down menu. You can have a general comment, or you can comment on a specific article within the bylaws, and then it just records the name, your comment, what the current text is that you have a comment on. And then if you have a replacement, suggested replacement, there's a place for that. And then there's also a place for putting an indication that, yes, this is a comment I have, but it also affects other areas within the bylaws, so that we make sure that we tie all of those together. And the purpose of this is the formality of recording all of the comments that come in, and that we respond as a committee to each and every completed comment, so that we have the chain. Basically, people are making comments. It can be demonstrated that their comments were heard and acted upon. They can either be accepted or declined, or maybe accepted with changes. We'll figure out what the dispositions on those are, but basically it's a matter of we will then filter that, and that'll be a permanent record as part of a particular draft. Then we'll have a new set of those for every draft we have. Hopefully we won't have that many drafts, but we could.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And let me just briefly say that at the last meeting, we had talked about a way to easily be able to get this filled out form to somebody with like a button, and I have not had a chance to follow up on that. So and Tom, the drop down doesn't seem to be working again.
You're not in Adobe Acrobat. You
No.
basically Google.
Most
Google
people don't
won't
have
do it.
Adobe. Yeah.
You
So
can get
if we
you can get it for free.
well, Reader you can get for free. You can't get
The reader you can get for free. All you need is the reader.
So if we download this, then we should be able to see the
Yes.
drop down.
Yes.
Okay, we'll test that. Okay, thank you. Any questions for the committee on the form? Okay.
I made
go
the
back.
changes that we talked about in making member name and
Thank you.
the other ones. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. Okay, so now we are going on to the article review. So we're starting with the ones we've talked about before, which are Article 3 membership, voting and district boundaries, and Article 7 subcommittees, and Article 8 parliamentary authority. And then we will go to new ones, which are Article 4 officers, Article 6 executive boards, and Article 9 amending the bylaws. So our favorite Article 3 is coming up now. And there were some changes made actually yesterday to this. So, so for those of you who are new to this, we weren't planning to go through the entire article. This is probably our 8th meeting, well, 7th, 8th meeting, where we've been going through this article. This article is the one that's the most complex and the most of interest, it sounds like. So it includes areas that are the boundaries for the NCAC, which is quite the hot topic, as well as identification of who the members are. So it's still in flux. We're not making any decisions on it today, but we can briefly go through and show you the boundary maps, since that's of interest to some people, and then talk about some of the updates. So Tom and Wyatt have been working on this very hard, and will you two take it away?
Actually, I'd like to share the screen. One of the goals I have for today
Oh,
is-
sorry, I thought I did. Sorry about that. I've been moving around and I thought, oh, you want to share the screen?
I
Okay.
want to do live edits.
Got it. Okay, let me let you do that. Okay, you should be able to do it.
Okay, screen one, share. And that, okay, so one of the goals for today for me is that typically, not typically, but always I try to make sure that we have an indication on the revision level. For those not familiar with it, basically every time we iterate a document, if you'll notice up here at the top, I'm working now on revision 11, which is what will be uploaded after the meeting's over. Every revision, I've tried to get a description, general description on what was done to it so that people can have context. But every once in a while, you need to do a cleanup. And that's what I propose we go through and say, okay, yeah, we're done with that. We can go ahead and turn the updates in red. We can go ahead and turn them black because we're okay with that. And since we've been iterating several times, we're quite a few behind. We're down to Articles 10. And we also do actually have a new slide, which is presented for consideration by the committee. And I don't think we should have a decision on it today, but it's something for us to think about and decide in the next meeting whether or not that's the way we want to go forward. Wyatt and I have had pretty good conversation on that, so I think we're good. So be that as it may, all of the slides, for those not familiar with it, have a purpose of this particular deck. This is more or less boilerplate with only several small things changed. The topics within that, and then we go into the day. See, now you can see here, we have a lot of red things which indicate that this is new stuff. So what I'm proposing, first of all, is anybody object to turning that text black? Hearing none? None. Okay. So we still have pending changes to clarifying what a resident is. I think we have a pretty good definition of resident. And by the way, that needs to be, that strike we can leave. Oh. Get rid of that. I think we have a pretty good handle on what a resident is. We've had a lot of input on that. So I think that anybody disagree that this is now satisfied?
Yeah, I think that's fine. We can hear from public comment later if anyone has a
Yeah, I
concern.
mean,
But thank
we-
you for with Tom Prohodich, I think had suggested this definition, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. The obviously all of this can be overridden later, but we want to make some decisions now. This clarification between voting membership and property, we have something that we've added that addresses that, but I think that's still pending. And we don't really need to tell people this is all, excuse me. All right. Okay.
So
we'll
while
just
Tom's
turn all-
doing this, just to make clear to our guests, each iteration, each R number, each rev number of this shows the new changes. And so why Tom is changing these in real time on this one is there will be a new version coming out, version 11, after this meeting with the updates. So one needs to go all the way through to see how the iterations have gone. But at some point, we will be putting in the new language for our recommended Article 3. That's up and it's evolving.
Yeah. So this The general format of these slides is that this is what we're working with a current draft, and this is things that might change or being proposed to change to this draft. Now, the original text is at the back of this slide set, so that if you wanted to refer to the original text, but without all the intermediate versions, you can look at it that way.
And by
So-
the original text, you're putting in where our starting point that was agreed upon at the October general NCAC meeting, correct? Where we reformatted and numbered the text. So
Yeah,
just to
Good
clarify.
point. Thank you. Okay, so here is the new slide, and this is for the benefit of the committee members to consider. We've been wrestling with the idea of having multiple people owning property and multiple people that well, let me just get into it. The changing the description of what a member is. We're proposing that rather than this is the original set of, or not the current draft, have a resident of Nesquin with proof of residency, an authorized representative of property owners, an authorized representative of the holders of beneficiary interest, an authorized representative of a business owner. The crux of that is that anytime you have multiple people owning property, those multiple people, it didn't seem fair that you could, if you had 40 people owning a property in common, that they would have 40 votes. Stepping back from that issue, the idea that 40 people owning it almost becomes a corporation. And actually the definition of corporation is a person that legally represents as a person. By the way, where we talk about resident being a natural, let's see, a natural person, that means not a corporation. So these are all corporations. They may not be formal corporations, but then again, Nesquin is not a formal corporation either. So we thought it might be an approach to say that, okay, a representative of the property owner, a representative of those might. So as an example of how you might get multiple people representing just from a single property, if you had 4 adults living in an apartment, I said flat rather than apartment. I've been I worked for people in the UK for about 20 years, so I'm liable to say flat instead of apartment. Anyway, renting an apartment over a business, the owner of the business leases that building. So in other words, you have renters, you have a business owner, plus you have a property owner. In that case, you'd wind up having 6 voters for a single property. The philosophy here is anybody who lives here and basically is a resident with proof of residency, everybody who lives here gets a vote. If you don't live here, you get a vote if you have some special interest, but you only get 1 vote per authorized property. Now, how that gets parceled out in terms of if you have multiple, going back to this previous one, you have at least one of the qualifiers. So if you may qualify in multiple, you may be a business owner plus a resident, that's fine, but you're still, that's a qualifier. So have I confused things?
And
Have I made
let
it
me
clear?
just say, and if you qualify in more than one area, you still get 1 vote.
That's
So,
as
correct.
per, yes,
Right.
that's per the directive that we've been given from the county.
Correct.
We don't have a choice on that.
Mm-hmm. And it makes sense.
So
Okay,
the
so this
idea
is
here
new.
is, pardon, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The idea here is you live here, you get a vote. If you have an interest here, you get a vote. a vote.
So if
Okay,
you have a family trust, one authorized person would get the vote.
Yeah.
If you, yeah. So are there any questions, any discussion for Tom and Wyatt? Wyatt, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'm still kind of wrestling with it. I had a chance to look at this morning, and I thought Tom had really kind of focused in on what we were all trying to do. This is going to require a little wordsmithing, I think, in order to implement the one person, one vote thing that the county wants. And I don't know that we've gotten to the point where Tom and I have even thought about how we're going to do that. Tom, if you have any thoughts about it, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
throw them out there.
yeah, we don't have to. In this section, there is a section on voting.
Okay,
We're talking
okay.
about what qualifies as a member. Now, how that gets parceled out to voting, that's not our problem here. So this is only talking about qualifications for membership.
Okay.
So we're not talking about voting,
Other than
but you have
that,
to be a member to vote. But
right,
how that all goes out is in the section that we moved to subsection V, Article V, subsection V. That's where that gets done.
And that's something Susan and I will be meeting about
Mhm.
next week. So thank you. We will be considering that. input.
Yeah, what we did there is we punted.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
so
Any other
everybody's,
discussion or any other thoughts, Wyatt?
no, I don't have anything else.
okay,
Okay.
so I'm gonna turn that black.
Okay.
Some people actually.
Well,
might be
before you
interested. Okay.
move, Tom, can you go back to that slide? How
I
about the
can.
other committee members? Do you, Michael and Susan, do you have any comments on any of this? Because it's brand new.
Well, I mean, you're right, you did punt. And it's a nice dance that we're doing right now. I appreciate it. I don't have a position on multiple votes per property and so on, but I know that it is something that we have to look at very, very closely, particularly in context of the one person, one vote concept, and particularly in the notion that we are an advisory committee rather than a policymaking committee. That is the NCAC. And the purpose of an advisory committee is to give advice to the county as they make policy decisions. There is an issue of democratic input here rather than property ownership input here. And that's really what the crux is. Without taking a side on what that is, that's going to be what's ground up into the crucible. That's my comment at this point.
So you're going to cogitate on that, Michael, and
Oh, I've been cogitating on that one. And I think all of us, and thank you, Tom, but all of us have been cogitating on that. And it is worthy that we continue to do so.
Yeah. Yeah,
I do have one comment. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
My question would be, if someone is a second homeowner, is that only giving them one vote then as a real property owner through the authorized representative versus people who live there full time, who are residents?
Okay, the intention of this is the criteria for being a member. Whether or not you get multiple votes is not covered here, really. But if you live here, you get a vote. If you own property here, you get a vote. You have
Right.
membership. Now, I said get a
Okay.
vote, and that was misleading. I'm sorry, I apologize.
I guess I'm looking at the definition, an authorized representative, real property owner. Say a married couple owns a house. Is it being proposed then that it's one representative who
That
can
is the
become a member,
representative.
but not the
Yeah.
husband and wife that can both be members?
If they don't live here, that would be correct.
I think we'll get pushback.
That's fine. We got to go somewhere. So this is a restriction. No doubt about it. This
Is
is
that
restricting.
inclusive? Is that inclusive?
They get a vote. They don't live here. they get a vote.
One vote.
That's my one vote, because they own one or more properties.
Okay.
These are all qualifications. But
If they live here, you're saying that each would get a vote because
That's
they're a
right.
resident. If they just wouldn't get it based on being a property owner. If they own 2 lots or 2 homes, then each would get a vote representing one of those homes, correct?
Yeah.
But if they own one property that they do not live in, then there would be one authorized person
Yeah.
to be a voting member, correct?
Right,
That
right.
doesn't mean other people couldn't go, and then there raises the whole issue of how do you vet that in a voting situation. There's a lot of practical issues in here, but that's basically what you're proposing is how a member would be designated, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but is that not stepping into how many votes and so on and
No.
so forth?
No, it's just saying that you're a member, you can be a member if you have this criteria. Now, how the votes get parceled out, we can cover that. But I think it is a separate issue. It's very tightly related, but it is a separate issue.
But listening
Because
to what Susan Schomburg says, and your response to her leads me to believe that the owner of a property who does not reside is limited to 1 vote.
Yes, correct. In your
Okay,
particular case,
husband and wife are equal owners, or they own a separate piece
Mhm.
each. Are they still limited to 1 vote?
separate piece each.
You're
I
saying
don't
if
know what-
you're
I don't
saying
know
if
what
they're
you mean
not
by that.
residents, correct?
That's my question.
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Well, husband and wife are normally joint owners.
Joint
in
owners,
Oregon law.
okay.
That's correct. Okay, but if there are more, but if they are not particularly husband and wife, but there are 2 different entities owning that property, what does this preclude them from having more than 1 vote?
Okay, if, apologies, can we make it specific to your situation? And that would be a good concrete example?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
And just for clarity, we have 12 pieces of property that are recognized by the state of Oregon on one identified property in Nescoin.
Think you
And
didn't
the
say
issue
that.
the issue for us is, do we have 12 votes?
Yeah, okay, so this case we have, I think you may not have said that exactly the way you intended. You have 12, essentially 12 owners of a single property. So there'd be 12 votes there. If you didn't have this representative. Is that correct?
That's correct. Now, you
Yeah.
know, and the reason I bring that up, and again, I'm not taking a position that we need more votes. That's not what I'm after
Okay.
right there. But this really is a point that needs to be clarified, because my
Yes.
deed specifies that I am 1/12 owner.
Okay.
And I can sell my deed on the public market without having to go through any relationship with the other owners.
Okay, my thought is that makes you a corporation, whether or not it's formal
Well,
or
no,
not.
you can't
Well, no,
just say that.
no,
No.
yeah, no, whether or not it's formal or not, that is in a corporation.
But
You
that's
have
that's a semantic term. That is
I
not a legal
understand.
term. Okay, and so
I understand.
we can't. But as a committee, we can't make that determination. That's
No, we don't. We can make recommendations to the county, and the county can make that determination. So we're not the final say on this. We're just proposing language.
Michael, just a question for you. Are you talking about a fractional ownership situation?
Yes.
Okay,
And just like a real corporation may have 50,000 people who own stock. They are the owners of the company. That's the extreme example.
Well, I understand the model, Tom. I understand the model, what you're saying. But legally, we're not a corporation, and so we can't deal with this kind of a situation as though it were. You know, that's beyond our scope of legal authority to do that.
I accept that as your opinion. It's not mine.
So basically, what we were hearing in some of the public comment and was that has brought this up is that in the event that you, and we were looking at it with businesses too at some point, but if there were something where there was a trust, let's take an example of a number of people that hold an interest in a home that they do not reside in, because if they reside, it doesn't matter how many there are. And each one had, say, that half of them, let's say, had a trust, a family trust, and there were 4 people in the family trust. And you could end up having 30 or so owners of a property, of one single property. And if there, most of the time it doesn't matter, but if there was a vote where it really mattered, would that be fair to have one property have 30 votes, for example, if everybody showed up? So likelihood of that ever happening is probably small, but it's one of the things that we need to consider, I think, as we develop this issue, this area. It's possible that this might be a little too extreme of limiting it to one, when there are often going to be 2 partners or a husband, wife, that kind of thing. So
okay, so I propose a way forward on this. It's sounding like we're teetering on the edge of legalities, as Michael pointed out. So we've already asked for clarification on other from the county legal, and see whether or not this is maybe we can get this vetted, and if they decide one way or another, then we don't have to.
So we're getting some input in the chats as well, and appreciate those. We will also consider those under the public comment. Thank you. And so let's table this for now, and
Yes,
thank
please.
you for your proposal, and we will cogitate and if you would like to get additional comments back to Wyatt and Tom individually, please feel free to do that. Let's move on.
Okay, thank you. I would just in deference to a lot of new people being here, I'd like to explain this map just briefly. Essentially, we've gone through a number of iterations on proposed boundaries for where you must live in order to be a member, where you must have interest. That may be living or it may be owning. Right now, the county has defined that as this blue area, which is designated as 2. That's the official in the Tillamook County maps. The thought was that maybe that was too exclusive. Currently, in our current bylaws, approximately this line to down to this line, and east and west to infinity are the boundaries. Now, I personally am right down there, so I'm excluded, but people in Mongolia are not. So I don't think that one's acceptable. So these tax boundaries are very easy to plot out in a legalistic way. It is everything in 5S 11W and just these 3 sections of 5S 10W would be included. Now, my understanding is there are people who live out here who want to be members. We don't know. We're going to get real information on that. But that's what this is all about. There's a proposal that we expand it to here. The Nesquin Community Association, they're basically, that's kind of, they have an east-west boundary now, but this is pretty much their purview. We're restricting it from that to this. There are those who advocate restricting it further to that. So I think that's all we should say on that.
Thank you, Tom. So this has been discussed at length. There are a number of opinions that we should be in the green area, the official Tillamook land use ordinance boundaries. And we've heard input from members saying that they think that that's too restrictive and that we should be in more the red zone for now. So what we're waiting on is Sarah Absher had offered to have her staff do GIS mapping of existing members as the people who had registered for the June election meeting. And when we get that data, we will look at the map again. Okay, so I think
Okay, I
that's
think
the
that-
only new stuff we have, correct?
That is correct. And we're done with this.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom. And now we're moving on to Article 7 subcommittee, or is there anything else from the committee members on Article 3 before we move on? Okay, thank you. On Article 7 subcommittees, Tom and I have done some revisions. So Tom, do you want to share yours or shall I share my PDF?
I didn't do any work on it since we last talked, so you got the latest.
Oh, I thought you did. Okay. So let me go ahead and
That is, you and
share.
I last talked. Well, maybe we
Oh.
did. I don't remember.
No, yeah, you did it after our last meeting though. So let me get to mine. And let me get out of this one. Get to article, what are we on, 7?
I wasn't as desperate to get that one updated as the other one.
No, but you did do some
Yeah.
changes. So based on our discussion last time. So do you want to explain your notes at the beginning, Tom? Because I don't remember.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So this is from our discussion from when we presented this at the last meeting on January 5th.
Yeah, I did
And
some housekeeping changes, basically,
Yeah.
to change some languages and to bring the original text into the document.
yeah. So basically the same boilerplate at the beginning. And the different topics. And yes, you did the wordsmithing here in this yellow area.
Yeah.
So for those of you who didn't join us before, we're proposing that since the NCAC is a committee, that everything under it would be a subcommittee. And so I think we have general agreement on that. And so we are renaming ourselves the Bylaws Subcommittee. The big change is that the current bylaws allow the NCAC chairperson to appoint committee chairs and committee meetings subject to the ratification of the membership. And because of some of the situations that have happened, the current board is being very transparent, having everybody elected. And we're proposing to actually capture that in the bylaws. So I did review this with a couple, well, with Mark and with Jeff. Alex, I haven't discussed it with you yet, so I'm glad you're here. But to go ahead and have everybody actually elected and have a process in there, which we will describe under, well, I guess we have it here, that there'll be a notice out there that a committee is being formed, ask for interest, ask for people to submit bios in their interest, and then have an election. So that's what's been happening with the Bylaws Committee. It happened with the Community Plan Committee, and it would happen with the nominating committee. It is happening now with the Nominations Committee. So that's I heard no objections at all. Mark was quite supportive, and Mark, you're welcome to speak up yourself. And Alex, I think this is something that really affects the officers. So please go ahead and say that whether you have any comment on that area. But that's one of the main changes that we're making. So, any comments?
I noticed a typo on that. That should be 7, not 6, on that particular slide. I'm going to fix that.
Okay.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
Hey, thanks. This is Alex.
Hi, Alex. Hi.
Hey, Wyatt sent me over a copy of the working draft of the language there for the
for the executive board, right?
yeah. And I mean, I fully support that. That's the way we've been approaching these two subcommittees, in the interest of having everyone involved from the get-go and letting everyone from the beginning have their say, so they don't feel like they're playing catch up. And I fully support the same process going forward with any other subcommittees that we need to form.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And this is Mark, and I've looked at it and we've talked a little bit about that, and I'm obviously supportive of doing that as well. Yeah, so.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's important to hear that input. So the other things that we're doing is adding a communications subcommittee as a standing committee. We're envisioning that would, well, we'll get to that later, but currently it's just a set of responsibilities under the secretary, which makes the secretary an extremely big job. So we'll get to that later.
Okay, before we go on from that, can we have consensus that I can do a cleanup on that? I'm going to change to Article 7, remove the highlighting and the first bullet under changes.
Okay, any objections to that? Okay, hearing none, go ahead and do that, Tom. Thank you. So the bylaws subcommittee, we had gone through changes in this in the past, and this is where I'd have to go to an earlier version to be able to see what those changes are explicitly. But basically, the main changes that I recall having, see, this is where this gets me a little, it's harder to remember exactly what we had done in an earlier draft of this, but the main change, well, let me see if I can. The main change that we had proposed last time was that that the bylaws committee themselves can actually recommend bylaws changes. Right now, the current bylaws say that we would get those requests from the chair or the members. And we're members, so we had gotten approval to start going through these things ourselves, but we're actually explicitly giving the committee the ability to do that.
It's mostly just transparency. We just want to make sure that people understand that we might be doing that.
Right. Otherwise, there's right.
Okay, go ahead.
Otherwise, there's really not anything different there, other than, we follow Oregon Public Meeting Law. That's all under committees in general. And then the nominations subcommittee, we did make a recommended change last time, so it's not showing up in red this time. But that the current bylaws say that it will be disbanded at the end of their selection process and the election. But it's a standing committee, so we looked at whether it should continue being a standing committee, which would be always there, or whether it should be changed to an ad hoc committee to be brought up just whenever, at the time it needs to serve and reelected. And we thought, well, if there's a vacancy in one of the officer positions, then the nominations committee could just be reconvened and to complete the term of the vacant office. So we would just leave it as a standing committee. It would get, it would be, now, and we need to change this. That says appointed by the chair. So we didn't catch that, Tom.
Where it's
At the top,
slide 6.
yeah. So basically, we would put in the same language about the committee being elected rather than appointed. So we'll bring that back.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I did review this with a couple of the officers too, and there was some question about whether a nominations subcommittee was even needed by Jeff. So he said I could share those comments with the committee. He said maybe it would just be easier to have the officers decide on who the nominees would be. I personally feel like a nomination subcommittee is the norm, and that would be a little easier. But I think his position is if you if you're just going to have everybody elected anyway and have a process like they did last time where people could just apply and be put in a slate, is there really a need to do any vetting? And I think the purpose of a nominations committee is to do some vetting and come out with a recommendation, but then there would still be an election and it would still be allowed to have nominations from the floor, et cetera. And more of that would be covered under the nominations and elections part of the bylaws.
And also
So-
any details on process would be in to the process and procedures document.
Right. So are
Right,
there
Nancy.
any comments? Michael?
Yeah, it occurs to me that the fewer pieces of authority laid on the executive committee, the better. This is an organization of members, and when we do that sort of thing, then they always run the task or the problem of the leadership putting in people they want. Rather than people who serve the greater membership. A committee a nominations committee at least assures that there is an identifiable group of people who will do vetting and decision-making and elections above board and open rather than a small group of people who are already in authority and power.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
This is Mark, and I just echo what Michael has just said. I think that having a nominations committee is important, and that having that committee, however that functions, whether they feel like there are people in the community they know that would be good for the organization, or however that works, having another set of eyes looking for folks to nominate for positions, I think is good. So I agree with Mike.
Okay, so
Thank
I do
you.
have the edit proposed to change, shall be appointed by the chair, shall be convened. And we won't say exactly how it's convened in that particular point.
I
So
think we should, though. We have it for the bylaws subcommittee, and I think we can do it in similarly.
In slide 6, it shall be convened 4 months before rather than appointed by chair. That's the change I'd make.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So you have that in red. Shall we let
Yeah,
you share your screen?
I think people can get that.
Okay.
It'll be in red.
So another question I have, I'm used to nominating committee as opposed to nominations committee. It's just a little thing, but would anyone object to changing it to nominating committee?
Subcommittee.
Subcommittee, thank you. Any objections to that?
You mean nominating rather than nominations?
Correct.
Yeah, oh, that's fine. That's fine.
It's just a little thing
That's
just
editorial.
bugs me every time I hear it.
I'll make that global change.
All right, thank you.
And I won't even highlight it because it's embarrassing.
All right, moving on to
Okay.
communications committee,
Yeah,
subcommittee.
I've been having problems with this, and I know I helped draft this, but if we make it an actual subcommittee, then the people who are doing the nuts and bolts work of keeping people informed starts to become, if it's a formal committee, then they've got to have open meetings. And do we really want to have open meetings on constructing the website? I'm uncomfortable with that.
You and I talked about that last night, and
Yeah.
I think that's going to be another question to add to the list for Sarah. Is by not calling it a subcommittee, are they still subject to Oregon meeting law? Because I agree with you that having to do tech support one-on-one and following the confines of Oregon public meeting law can be difficult, just like it is for all of us. But at the same time, I'm not sure renaming it would make that much of a difference. So before we discuss, let me just go through it real quick. That currently all these requirements are under the secretary as part of the current bylaws and with a slight rewording. But that's a big job, and Jeff spends a lot of time doing that in addition to the typical secretary work. So one of the valuable things of having a group, whether it's a subcommittee or some ad hoc group, is that you can have a webmaster. You could have eventually maybe the NCAC might even want to have a newsletter, but you could have someone who's doing some of the record keeping, for example, and notice of meetings, that kind of thing. There's a lot in here, including maintaining the membership web roster and that kind of thing. So it's a big job there's actually two sections here. And the nice thing about having a committee is that you may get people to do kind of bite-sized jobs, and webmaster wouldn't be a bite-sized job, but that might later move into some officer positions or get more involved. It allows more people to be involved with the NCAC. So the downside, if indeed having a group would require that they coordinate through Oregon Public Meeting Law one-on-one, basically, might be an issue. I think there's still a lot of value in having more than one person. I think it would be hard to find a secretary who would do all of this. And I see your hand, Michael, so I will call on you in just a moment. But the right now it's a big job, and let's just go to you, Michael. So,
Well,
thank you.
I guess I'm thinking about holding on perhaps to the concept, if not the title of coordinator. Maybe director or something of that sort, and then adding a line that says that the coordinator, director, whomever may develop a team to do the tasks of communications. Because I understand that the subcommittee itself, I kind of agree with Tom. It sort of opens up a can of worms there about public laws, public meeting law.
Okay. So, so we'll
I'm in
have to
favor of
ask.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I see your hand. Why? Let's also mention that we were thinking that this committee would report to the secretary, that they would still basically be the communications coordinator. Jeff was saying he thought because they're all related to secretarial duties that he would see himself being that function along with secretary. He wouldn't need to have a separate committee chair that would have to go to executive board meetings and that kind of thing. So Wyatt?
I think there's a number of arguments to be made to change the status of whatever this is going to be from a subcommittee. I personally find it somewhat ironic that we would require the communications committee, with all the responsibilities that it has, excuse me, to have minutes of their meetings. And it seems to me that really kind of directs it towards a change in status that would eliminate the necessity of compliance with the Oregon public meeting laws, which are cumbersome, as we've noted. And you don't want to have this committee or this group or this coordinator encumbered with those kinds of additional obligations. There's another thing that I think we have to be cognizant of, and that is member exhaustion, which is the idea that somehow or another we're going to drive away membership participation if we flood the website with so many public meetings of not only the committee but subcommittees. And I was amused by that as well, but the more I thought about it, it's also a very real thing to consider.
Okay, thank you. So let me add this to the list of things to ask Sarah about
So
because
the
I'm not
idea-
clear on if you have a webmaster and you have somebody doing some of the records related things and you have, blah, 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 different people, would what we call them make it a difference in terms of how they would have to operate? Does that sound fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm I'm inclined to back off of calling it a subcommittee and calling it and retaining the term which was originally there, coordinator.
And then it doesn't
Uh,
belong under subcommittees, right?
That is correct.
Right.
Well, we don't know
Um,
where to put it. We could leave it there for now. But I think when we ask the question, we should ask the question, does this coordinator and people who work with this coordinator need to be, it makes the question slightly different rather than, does this have to be a subcommittee?
Right. I agree. So
You know-
I will, if you would like to send me your wording for that, Tom, I'll make sure that I include
will-
it exactly, because
what
I
I'll
like
do-
what you said.
What I'll do is I'll accept I'll change all of these things to black.
Okay.
And then I'll retrofit
Right.
back to what it originally said, which was coordinator.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from everybody is that if if Sarah comes back and says that a coordinator with a group of people working under them or working with them on various aspects of this do not fall under Oregon public meeting law, then we would go that direction, correct? And if she says, no, it doesn't matter, it's still operating as a committee, it needs to be Oregon public meeting law, then we would go back and look at this again, correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. And
Okay.
just to put a point on it, a coordinator might hire a person that's not a member. They may,
Right.
do it for hire. So that
Sure. Except we have
coordinators
no
is actually
budget, but yeah.
more flexible.
Okay.
So the only other change is maintains member records down to the last bullet on the
Yes.
page. We discussed this. Anybody object to leaving that as accepting that as a change?
I don't object,
Okay.
but I am concerned that we may be micromanaging in the bylaws functions of the officers.
Maintaining the member records is a
Oh,
serious.
I
that
understand
one's
that. It's
important.
not any particular thing. It's just, that a lot of this stuff may go into policies and procedures rather than bylaws.
They're in the
bylaws-
they're in the bylaws now, and we would have to explain why we remove them
Yes,
if we do.
right, yeah.
So,
yeah.
we can certainly propose that, but I'm trying to make it as easy on us as possible.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Okay.
well, thank you. And we will think about that, Michael.
Okay, I will
That's good.
put out
Thank
a
you.
new version later today that
All right.
backs off that.
Thank you. And there's no change in this page, correct, Tom?
Correct.
Okay.
Other than the title.
Okay, and then we just basically did some wordsmithing on just talking about creation of other subcommittees that basically we're doing what you're suggesting, Michael, and have that go to the policies and procedures document.
Yes.
But again, they'll be established by the membership as opposed to by the chair, which is what it was before. And I understand, Mark and
Okay.
Alex, you're fine with that.
Anybody
so-
object to accepting that?
Okay.
No. No objections. Okay, good.
All right,
I'll
thank you.
do that.
I notice, and thank you, different people who are putting things in the chat. There's a comment that's really interesting here with that Tom Prahovich said about where is it here? That Bill Bush, who's here at the meeting, was an officer of the NCAC when the current boundaries were set, and it would be interesting to speak to the history of that. So, Bill, if you're going to still be here at the end of the meeting, we would love to hear that. If you're leaving, then be interesting to hear now, but if you're going to stay anyway, I'd appreciate hearing that. Is Bill still here? I'm not seeing the whole list of members who are on the call.
He's here.
Okay.
Notice that Sarah Absher has joined us.
Oh,
Sarah,
good. Thank you. Sarah, where are you?
how's the weather?
Fabulous.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Yes, I apologize for being late. And today is the first day where we are actually running normal inspection routes because it is
Wow.
finally thought out enough. So it's great to be here, and I am taking notes as you guys are talking. So I'll just keep listening.
Okay. Well, thank you. When I'm sharing, I can't see everybody who's here. So Wonderful. So we have some questions for you. I'm gonna step out of the agenda for a moment and just could we go back to the blog and talk about because we've heard informally that we can't
Correct.
and the reason, let me just go through what we're seeing a blog as being is something where the committee members, I'm calling them subcommittees now, but could talk, be able to interact on the blog because we would be given authorities on the blog, but that it would be available for the public to view and they could comment, outside of the blog. But it's something that would allow us to get some work done between our committee meetings without having to call each other one-on-one and that kind of thing. So we thought it would really improve our productivity but still be able to meet Oregon public meeting law. So could you please comment on that?
Sure. So to confirm, County Council has said, no, it is not possible to have a blog. So as an
Okay.
advisory body to the county, following what the county protocols are for public meetings and how we operate, it is not something that County Council can support. So there's too much risk within that. That was an emphatic no. So
And did you
I
say
know
what
the
risk they're
conversation
concerned?
keeps coming up, but there's, there's too much concern about maintenance and monitoring for the public records piece of it that County Council does not feel comfortable with that happening. So I'm very sorry about that, but that is a hard no.
Could I
Okay.
could I ask for what's the logic is of that? And because it's just escaping me that what the difference between saving a set of slides and looking at them and iterating them between meetings is between that and a publicly available stream of consciousness.
There's no way to notice a public meeting law with a public meeting with a blog. So the direction from County Council has been for the NESCO and CAC and others that following public meeting law, that these conversations and the work needs to be done in the open setting of your scheduled public meetings.
So they're counting a blog as if it was a meeting.
That is correct, because you can have a quorum.
Okay, that's what I was looking for logic here, and
Thank you.
that's the
Yep.
logic.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
that's
I'm
their
sorry.
logic, and okay.
I'm sorry, I know
but-
some of you really wanted it, but
Yeah, we
I've
were really
actually
hoping.
gone back a couple of times to say, so can we talk about this again? And
Okay.
I can't keep asking.
No,
I appreciate you doing
appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what time you got on, Sarah. We went through the definition of resident earlier in Article 3 on membership, and were you here for that part of the discussion?
I was not, but I
Okay.
appreciate you bringing that up. I just do want to share that, I am being contacted. There's residents that are concerned about a potential change in the membership boundary. And I just want to, for folks who are on today or maybe listening to this meeting later, just want to, make sure that it's understood that there is no hard and fast rule of where that membership boundary should lie. Some communities, their membership boundary is their community boundary. Others, like Nescoin, decided to extend it outside of the community boundary to include Slab Creek Road and other areas. Both approaches are fine. So I just want to clear up that there's no legal hard and fast rule of where that membership boundary should be or has to be. The NCAC is an advisory body to the county. The voting and the voice is very important, but it is meant to be inclusive and not exclusive. And that's why there was never anything written in that would require membership boundary to only remain within the community boundary. So I just want to say that for the record, and also that, decisions that are made in a public setting, be it by me as the director of the department, the planning commission, or the board of county commissioners, there's that platform for public comment and participation always exists. And so the other thing I'm concerned about is I don't want anyone to feel like their voice is going to be lost or not heard. So thank you for giving me the space to say those things, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. I think it's really important. We've been kind of holding off. So at this point, this is the map that we're looking at. The two green lines up at the top and the bottom are the existing boundaries.
Mhm.
The blue is, of course, your official Tillamook County Land Use Ordinance boundary. And then the red is where Tom, I'm going to give, I'm speaking for you, Tom, but it's
blame me for that one. Okay.
but Tom looked extensively there. This is iteration number 10, I think. And we now have iteration 11 that we talked about. Anyway, that this was the logical way of looking. We think will include the people who are currently members, but take out some of the extra area using tax boundaries. Have you had any opportunity to get the GIS mapping for that we sent you the coordinates for?
So
Or the
I
addresses
am
for?
currently finishing that by hand, which is
Oh,
you
fine
are?
because
my
I
gosh.
can totally do that. It's fine. We have very limited GIS ability at this time and access to resources where actually the county is considering contracting with a larger firm to do our GIS work. But Nancy, I will have that to you. I'm doing it by hand and it's
Oh.
not a problem at all. So I definitely think that's important for you to see and I would like to see it as well. But yes, it's on its way.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay, thank you very
Yep,
much.
absolutely.
As you're sleeping at night, as you're trying to go to sleep, you can do
It's
our
actually
our
it's a good
mapping.
exercise. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. But
Okay.
yes,
we'll try
but
not
I
to feel
just
guilty about
yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, because I think it'll be very illustrative of where our current members are, because I think the committee is feeling like we don't want to exclude people, but
Mhm.
so this just came up today, a proposal from Tom and Wyatt on looking at classes of members. And so
Okay.
since you're here, I'm going
Yeah,
back to it.
please.
If there's
No.
no objection to our members, we're going back in the agenda here. This is a rare opportunity. So so what they're suggesting is that there are 4 classes of members people who can be voters. So if you're a resident, you're a voter, you're a voting
Mhm.
member, period,
Mhm.
if you're within the boundaries. If you're a real property owner, that's another category. If you're a holder of a beneficial interest in a real property, it's category, or a business owner is a category. So if it doesn't matter how many people are in a house, if they live there, each one gets a vote.
Mhm.
If you're an owner of a property, but you don't live in it, and there might be anywhere from 1 owner to 30 owners of a given property, there's 1 vote.
Okay.
So this is we really want your input on this. It would be an authorized representative of that designated property. If there's
Can I ask a
group that owns,
clarifying? Can I ask a
yes,
clarifying question?
yes,
So
please.
if the business owner is one of several that are real property owners, then all of those business owners would ultimately still have the ability to vote because they would also qualify as a real property owner. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah,
Or
these are
not.
the qualifications. If you qualify as a member, you need to have one of these criteria. Now,
Yeah.
this doesn't actually talk about votes per property. It sort of punted that away to the voting section, which is
But
in
it sort
a
of
different
does.
area.
I mean,
Yeah. But it sort of does. But it's what the idea is that you have a resident, anybody who lives here gets a vote. Anybody who owns property but doesn't live here, they would get that property would have a vote.
Mhm.
And by virtue of having a representative, the same thing for a business owner or the beneficial interest. So
Okay.
what we're doing is saying that's essentially they're virtual people, virtual corporations, that there's a representative. That is a proposal, not universally accepted, but that's a way of keeping, in the extreme example, if a multinational corporation owned a piece of property here, the owners of that property are the stockholders. That you could
Right.
have 50,000 stockholders. I don't think that's what we want to have.
Okay.
So this is a way of paring down that number. Now, maybe it's an extreme paring down, and there could be some way of making that large, but basically we're trying to pare it down to, if you own a property, there is a representative that can be a member. And membership then enables you to vote.
And if you look at the subject line, Tom, you're talking about number of votes per property.
Yeah.
I think some of this would be like if you know, if one person has, say, 2 properties, they get 1 vote. We've heard that before from you. It's not fair for somebody to have multiple votes. If a husband and wife or 2 partners own a property that they do not reside in, they would have to designate one of them to be the voting member.
Okay, so
under
that
this
was the piece I
proposal.
was missing. So basically 1 vote per property is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Unless you own multiple, then you just get 1 vote anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Or if you live there, then you would be under a resident as a different category. You would still get each person
Yeah.
would get a vote. But if they are doing it as property that they do not live in, Wyatt?
Yeah, I think at some point or another, we're going to have to include a section on cumulative voting, which would solve, I think, the problem and concerns.
Yeah,
And
well,
can you
that's,
expand on that?
that's in the other section. The cumulative, the paring down. Right now, we're just trying to see how many people qualify for a given property. How many
But
members?
what do you
of
mean
that?
by cumulative voting, Wyatt?
Well, having more than 1 vote based upon not only residency, but ownership, or 1 vote per property, as opposed to every property owner having a vote based upon their ownership of that property.
Right. So we
They
just
do
need to
that with
say in there.
condominium or the homeowners associations all the time.
Okay. Okay. So thank you. We'll follow up on that. But basically, no person is going to have 2 votes or more than 1 vote, correct?
No,
Right.
right. So no person is going to have more than 1 vote, and no property is going to have more than 1 vote.
Right.
Ah,
So do you,
that's interesting.
Right? Is that what I'm hearing? Because if I
Yes.
own the
No.
property and Tom is the business owner, let's say he leases it from me, do we both get a vote?
Yes. The extreme example, I've got it down under at the bottom. You got 4 adults living in an apartment. That should be apartment rather than flat. And they live over a business, and the business is owned, the property is owned by somebody else. You'd have 6 voters for a single property. Because you have 4 people living there. You have somebody who owns a business there and somebody who actually owns the land.
Yeah, the business is a separate form of ownership.
Yes.
Right. So when I hear 1 vote for property, sorry, that's where I'm getting hung
No,
up.
that's not correct. That is not what I'm attempting to say. I'm
Okay,
saying what-
thank you.
You have 1 vote for in each category. These are qualifications. So you're qualified if you do this or this or this or this. You can qualify 1 person as a real property owner if that exists, and you can qualify in any number of different ways. And so that there could be 6 people who could be qualified in the extreme example. It may not be extreme examples, most I could think of at the time.
because in your extreme example, the 4 adults renting are residents. So
Yes.
each one gets a vote as being a resident. The business owner gets a vote, even though they're renting the property, and then the property owner gets a vote, being a property owner, correct?
And what
Okay.
if there are multiple property owners? They each get a vote?
No,
It would be an authorized representative according to this proposal.
Yeah.
Unless they're a resident.
but they qualify in a different way.
Mhm.
So are you going to, so I would be happy to vet this through county councils.
Oh, good, good.
But what I'm hearing you say is that maybe there needs to be, under real property owner, it would be if there are multiple property owners, 1 vote.
That's essentially what that bullet is meant to say.
So
But
at this point, Sarah, we do not have an agreement from the committee where it's been
Yeah.
broached for the first time today.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it would be very helpful to understand from you and
Sure.
county council whether this is a feasible way to go or not.
Thank you, Nancy. And I'm so sorry if I am taking up time, just so I get this right
Nope.
in my head.
We really
No,
appreciate it because
this
this
is
is
very
fundamental.
I apologize if any of this is redundant. So if
No.
there is a property that is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and they reside on the property, they each get a vote. But if
Since-
Mr. and Mrs. Smith own the property, but they do not reside in Niskawin, they only get one vote. So it's weighted, the votes are weighted if you reside in Niskawin. Is that what I'm hearing?
that is the intention, yes.
Okay, thank you. That helps. I appreciate that. That helps me get that straight in my mind.
Nancy,
Yes,
this is Guy. I apologize, joined late. I had something going on this morning. But anyways, what if is there any consideration or any way that someone who is registered to vote within whatever boundary the 97149 or whatever boundary the bylaws committee comes up with, but if it is being registered to vote in this community a possible way of dealing with, then you're eligible to vote in the CHC. And would that
so you're talking about
impact the
registered to vote
residents?
legally, not registered to vote as a member of the NCAC, but
Right.
registered
I'm
to
talking
vote.
about, so,
Mm.
going to, I think where Sarah was, so, my wife and I own property here, but we don't, there's only one name on the property. We're both registered to vote. Now,
Mhm.
according to this, yes, we have to go prove residency, some kind of proof. But would that proof, is that where you put someone who's registered to vote here as proof of residency?
So earlier we have a definition of resident, and we thank
Okay.
Tom Prohovich for providing this. It's basically under Oregon public law statute here.
Okay,
So if you click on that, we feel like that's been a pretty good definition
Okay.
of resident. And
Mm.
so I'm going to
Okay.
defer that. And it's 10:52. I've mentioned all meeting that we're likely to have to extend the time. So is there any
Mhm.
objection if we extend the time to 11:30? Hearing none, the meeting time is extended.
Nancy, can I ask one more
Mhm.
question too, please?
Please.
Just to kind of thank you.
Yes.
This
we are
is
so
something
glad
that's
you're here.
actually been on my mind for a while, and I think it relates to what we're talking about now and also the membership boundary. Does the committee feel, and maybe this is a larger question for the CAC as a whole, is the priority the voting action, or is the priority participation? Because you don't always vote. There's things that happen all of the time that do not require a vote. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, is the priority of the CAC as a whole to determine who gets to vote, or is it to make sure people can participate?
It's a very good point, Sarah. It's a
So
very good point.
by separating the voting question to the other section,
Mhm.
I think we avoided that here. This is talking about who is a member. So membership is participation. I'm not sure that I've really made the difference in my mind between participation and voting.
Well, I'm not sure there is one, Tom. I think
yeah,
membership conveys voting rights, and there's nothing to say that we're not going to allow people who are not members to be on the call. I mean, that's another question, but I don't think they can be separated. And it kind of goes back to one of our very first meetings when you were saying inclusivity allows participation as opposed to exclusivity. So
That's kind
Michael?
of where I'm at, Nancy. Thank you.
If I could speak for just a minute about this, and it was a good question from Sarah.
Mhm.
Personally, I think, and maybe I'm trying to speak from the leadership, I think we would like participation to be high. That's what we are trying to, that's a goal, is for more people to participate in everything that's going on. So trying to be inclusive at all points that we can. And we have to try and foster that in some of the things that we do. And so voting, people will show up and vote if they want to vote, but I would be an advocate for participation, and then the voting will just be what the voting is after that. So
Okay, can I ask for a little
Let me
clarification on
just
your
go
statement?
back.
I'd
Oh,
like
okay.
a
If you're
little
asking for
clarification.
clarification, sure.
Uh,
And then we'll get to you, Michael.
are you speaking of the boundaries or the criteria for membership in that statement?
well, I guess I hadn't really thought about the boundaries, but I just having people come to the meetings and participate in the process, I guess, is what I look at. I've looked at the boundaries, and I think being inclusive, as inclusive as we can be when we set the boundaries, is what, personally, I'm speaking for myself, is what I think is important. So.
Okay, so you're speaking of boundaries rather than criteria for membership.
I think I'm hearing both.
I'm saying both. I'm asking both.
Okay.
Michael?
Yeah.
And by the way, I can't necessarily see your hands the way when I'm sharing. So let me just stop share here.
Sarah, I'm going to toss in just one little twist that we've talked about earlier and we've talked about before. And that is, I belong to a group of people who own 1/12 of a property. And that's not just by agreement, that's legal ownership. Our deeds, you might look at the deeds, there are 12 deeds. Right. To one property, and that and incidentally, just to make it clear to everybody, I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just arguing for clarification, and that's important to me because this is the crux of the whole deal. It's either one vote per property, or it's one vote per person, and somehow we have to draw that line. Now, we're an advisory council. We're not a policy-making council, and so when I look at that, we want people to speak up and make their point made, and find out what the sense of the membership is, and so on and so forth. And whenever we talk about voting, people get anxious because this is a fundamental, basic concern about democracy. We may not be able to verbalize it and articulate it really, really well, but we sure can feel it. And how is it that my 12 people have 12 votes more than the person next to us? I mean, how does that work, for Pete's sake? Well, they're human beings, and they have a perspective on reality, and they have a voice in a democracy, and that voice ought to be heard. Now, does their vote actually count for something substantial? Like, we're going to put a road in here. Well, wait a minute, that kind of thing. No, that's not what this group is about. That exists at a level higher than the NCAC. I think if we're going to deal with this, this is the crux of the whole matter. Period.
Okay, Wyatt?
Yeah, I'm beginning to wonder after this discussion whether we really need to have a separate section in the bylaws on participation versus membership. It seems to me that some people just don't want to join organizations, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to voice, assuming they meet certain qualifications, i.e. living or owning property within the boundary, to address the committee and participate in a meeting on issues that they are concerned about. So I throw that out as food for thought.
Well, there's nothing that restricts us from having people who are not members attend any of these meetings. And all of the documentation is available to anybody on the internet.
Yeah, but Tom, the point I make to you is that if you get into a discussion about a particular issue that the committee is going to be making a recommendation about, and all we're going to do is take a vote of the membership, it seems to me that if you really want to address the concerns of the county, as well as what I think Michael has just talked about, is writing in a participation section to the bylaws so that they're guaranteed the voice and it can't be cut off because they're not members.
Okay, I'm
a bit confused about what you're saying.
I think you're right, Wyatt. I was trying to articulate that in my own mind, and you just did. And I think that's an interesting thing to deal with. I'm not sure that that's something we ought to do, but it's an interesting idea that we might take some time to talk about in the future.
So basically what I'm hearing you two say is that if we, and it might be really difficult to implement, but if we, and maybe it gets back to what you were saying too, Tom, about voting versus participation, that what I'm hearing you say is that everybody should be able to be a member, that they're in the given boundaries and they meet these different criteria. But in terms of vote, if there was a vote taken, then they have to qualify as these different categories. Is that what I'm hearing? Because on a practical level, I don't know how we would do it. You know, suddenly you get into a vote and suddenly you have to spend a half an hour figuring out which of the people on the meeting can actually vote, right? I don't see we could do it. So
if people choose not to be members but they reside within the area where they should have a voice or participation, then we ought to be able to write in something that allows us to recognize their right to participate.
I think if you snooze, you lose. If you don't become a member, if you're not involved enough to become a member, then maybe you don't care enough.
Well, or maybe we need to actually establish, well, we do, what we were talking about in the bylaws, having someone actually register as a member, and they put in these criteria. I'm going to cut off this discussion at this point.
Thank you.
But we will be going back into public comment later. I see, Hillary, you're asking, are we doing public comment now? And we're technically not, so thank you. But we are definitely keeping the chat open. The chat will be published. If anyone wants to put comments in the chat, please feel free. That will go on the website as a permanent record. And thank you for your discussion and all of your input. I've got a lot of thinking to do myself as a result of this. So it's a tough one. So I'm now going to go back and look at my other list of questions for Sarah, since we have you, Sarah.
Sure.
And okay, I think we got that one. Okay. So actually, I think is there anything else that you wanted to mention while you're here?
Sure. Just quickly. I caught part of the conversation about the communication coordinator versus the committee.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure if I heard correctly. But did I hear something about potentially hiring someone?
No, that was, I think Thomas just throwing that out as we don't have money for that. So basically thank you for bringing that up.
Well, and it would
gist of
it. It would fall under the county umbrella. So it would be something like, so hiring consultants, hiring people, that is something that is outside of the scope of the CAC. So just to kind of recenter that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a speculative thing, just wild example, ill-advised.
But I'm glad you brought it up, because what we were talking about falls directly under your area of Oregon public meeting law. So I understand there is a document, I haven't seen one yet, but that defines Oregon public meeting law for us. But what we were looking at is right now the communications coordinator is under the secretary part of the bylaws. And we were looking at possibly doing a communications subcommittee there where there might be a webmaster. There could be someone who's maintaining records. There could be someone who eventually does a newsletter, someone that handles communications out to the so we're just throwing out different possibilities that could be under that to kind of develop getting people involved, but also offloading, because right now it's a huge job for the secretary to do all of it. And it would be under the secretary. They would report to the secretary because a lot of those functions relate to that as kind of part of the proposal. But the comment came up about, would that mean then that everybody on that committee or subcommittee would fall under Oregon public meeting law, and doing tech kinds of IT work in that could be really very, very difficult. So if we were to have it where it's a communications coordinator position and they would have different people that would do different functions, would they be able to operate outside of Oregon public meeting law?
So are you talking about a committee or just
Well,
assigning different members tasks?
Okay,
Signing different.
here's the scenario. You got 4 people helping out the coordination of communication to the membership. They wouldn't have meetings, formal meetings. They would have informal conversations on, well, okay, I'm doing this to the website, so you need to do that for the newsletter. Okay, here's this, this notice needs to go out. That may be several different people. And there actually may be 3 people talking at the same time. Does that constitute a meeting? Or is that just trying to do the nuts and bolts of getting communication out?
Are they a committee?
No,
Are
well,
you
not
going
right
to
now.
utilize
Right
them
now,
as a committee?
Well, see, that's what we were debating. If it meant that they would be under Oregon public meeting law, we would probably not make them a committee.
let me put the text as revised. I already did the revision up on the screen. Perhaps that
And would
help.
it include your executive board? Would it
No.
include your officers? So I know,
No.
like, I'll use Oceanside as the example. You have one member who does a newsletter, you have the chair who does other functions, different people do different things. Some of them are officers, some of them are not. If they have a quorum, then they meet publicly, right? So if your executive officers, if you have 3 or more get together, that's a public meeting. Or if you have 3 committee members get, or more get together, that's your public meeting. If basically like Nancy volunteers to do the email updates and, I'll just say Hillary because I can see her name, says, I'll write a newsletter, and Bill says, I'll help with this part of maintaining a website, and you're just community members, but you're not part of a committee or creating a quorum. I don't think there's an issue with that.
Okay.
But I think where you
Okay.
immediately fall in that public meetings law bucket is if you have a committee, as per your bylaws, that is formed to do this work, then you're there.
Okay, so that
Okay,
answers our question then, that we should take that out of the subcommittee proposal.
I think I'm sharing. I don't.
Yeah.
You're
Tom,
not
I don't
sharing,
see
but
anything.
let's not worry about it,
Yeah.
Tom, because I
Okay,
want to
so-
move on.
Okay.
I think we got the question answered, and we'll go back and revise that out of the. So if there's no objection, Tom and I are recommending that we take the communications committee out of the subcommittee proposal, and we'll put it back under Jeff. But we'll amend in the officers section that Bill and I have, will recommend that we add some functions possibly under.
So
Well,
the
it's
only
not really officers either.
Yeah.
It's more of a function section.
And right now this says the chair may appoint a communications. Did we want to make that secretary? Since the secretary is responsible for it?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
I'll make
but
that
again,
change.
subject to the membership, Tom.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
everything. So,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. moving on, I'm going to share now. So if there are no objections, I'm going to move on to Article 8, Parliamentary Authority. And I'm hoping that that one will be a nice, easy one. Let me see here. Let me get back. How do I go back here? Oh, I've got to do that. Okay. So Article 8, Michael, we did some revisions from last time when we brought this up, as we discussed. So we added the Tillamook County regulations as the parliamentary authority. So this is normally a fairly quick section of the bylaws, and this is the new wording. We corrected Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, and then added Tillamook County regulations as part of the parliamentary authority. And then we had moved parliamentarian section over to officers, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So is there any discussion on this? It's very simple.
No, the only thing I would note that on the second line of the proposed, add the word of the.
Thank you.
You see that, Tom?
No,
Shall
I
be the
don't.
governing rules of the operation of the NCAC.
Oh,
It's over on the
Okay,
left. It's just
gotcha,
not over in the
gotcha.
proposed.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on the, you got the current draft, got the proposed draft on second line of proposed
Okay.
draft. Of the operation rather than.
Okay.
What it looks
Uh,
like to me, Tom, is that the proposed is the old wording and the new is on the left.
Oh, is that right?
That's what it's looking like to me, because that looks correct on the
Yeah.
left. It's got the Tillamook County regulations. So
Okay, yeah, all right, then never mind.
no, you're I'm glad you brought it
I'll
up, because
I'll
normally
consolidate
it would
that.
be over on the right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah, that's what flipped me out there.
yeah.
Yeah, otherwise this is fine. I mean, it's straightforward. Yeah.
Okay. Any comments from the committee or Sarah on this? Okay, I don't think there's much significant
No,
change
there's
here.
nothing there.
It's
That's fine.
just a little bit reworded
No,
from the
Nancy,
original
thank you.
bylaws.
Okay.
So
I'll
Okay.
update this slide set to indicate the decisions on that
Okay.
is accepted.
So
Okay.
could we please have a motion to approve Article 8?
I move to approve Article 8, Parliamentary Authority.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Ah, success.
Yeah, we have one. We have two. We have Article 1 name and we have
Oh.
parliamentary authority. All right, so now we are going to some new ones. I'm going to skip over officers for now because Bill isn't here and we may still run out of time. So let's go to Article 6, Executive Boards. Wyatt and me. Where are we, Wyatt?
Up.
All right, so you will see that there's a little different format here because really we ran out of time to do the fancy PowerPoint. So this is a new section. We don't have that in the current bylaws. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we're very appreciative of the board, the officers trying this out on January 23rd. But we feel like this is a really good way for the officers to be able to meet and plan, and it would include the officers and the committee chairpeople on the executive board meetings. So we're recommending, Wyatt and I, that the board would consist of elected and appointed officers, and that the basically Sarah would serve in an advisory capacity to the board, and that it'll transact necessary business between the meetings of the membership and other business that would be referred by the membership, which includes planning agendas, discussing the work of subcommittees and officers. We don't anticipate that the executive board would make significant decisions, but would make recommendations to bring to the membership. That they would do the budget preparation to bring to the membership for approval at the June annual meeting, because right now the current bylaws state that the treasurer will do the budget, and feel like it needs to have more discussion. Authorize the payment of membership bills within the limits of the budget, and then ratification at the next meeting. I understand that there isn't that much of a budget to worry about, but we are recommending regular treasurer's reports. And then recommend to the membership the creation of new committees or subcommittees. Actually, we should change that to subcommittees. Present a report of at meetings of the membership from the executive board, and that they would take no actions that conflict with bylaws. And then that we're recommending that the executive board would meet once a month, a minimum of 14 days prior to the membership meetings. There is some flexibility if the board doesn't want to meet, or if they want to change the meetings, there's some flexibility in that. But they'll be noticed and held in accordance with Oregon public meeting law and our policies and procedures and bylaws. And they could be either fully electronic or hybrid. And then if there's a need for a special meeting, that could be called by the chairperson, etc. The membership shall establish a quorum for the transaction of business, and that quorum would be 50% of the board members rounded up to the next odd number. No voting by proxy. Any comments?
Yeah, I got a question.
And let me just ask first if Wyatt has anything to add to this.
I think it's important that you understand that this was crafted to achieve two purposes. The first of which is to make the work of the officers a little bit easier and less cumbersome. And secondly, to maintain the kind of openness and what's the word I'm looking here for, Nancy? Transparency that we think needs to be done in order to maintain the support of the membership.
Okay, my comment is, and apologize, it's the first time I'm saying this, but you had an aside there that said that, it's not anticipated that they would make any decisions. I think that would be good to have explicit rather than just as a side comment as we're doing it. So if there's some restriction on agenda items or decisions, whatever that might be, it should probably be explicit in this.
I think that's dangerous language, Tom, because it's overly broad.
Well, I'm not suggesting any language. I'm just suggesting that what Nancy said by way of introduction in section 2A, that it's not anticipated that there would be any decisions. For instance, things that would go off to the county. This is meant to be this is meant to be about the mechanics of the organization as opposed to making recommendations for external communication. So I don't know how you want to say that. I've not thought about it, but
yeah, I hear you.
Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Let's you and me talk about it, but I think we could put something in there that the decision that all business will be referred to the membership for approval. Something like that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to submit the agendas to the membership for approval, are we?
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
So how it differs from a regular meeting isn't clear here.
Well, the language is maybe just needs to be restrictive in nature. So in other words, we can work on that so that it limits it to what's in subsection 2.
Yeah, that's, as I say, I'm just looking at it for the first time, and that's the thing that occurred to me is, how is this different? And if you put little language in there that says, here's the fence in which we're happy to live in, otherwise it's just another meeting, another general meeting.
Well, except it's giving us more, it is more setting up something where you're planning your agenda and hearing more detail that might be brought in. So like, for example, for the bylaws committee, we would have an opportunity. I mean, right now we have 2 officers here, which is terrific, but we would have an opportunity to be able to provide maybe a little more discussion with the officers on things that would pertain to them.
I'm not arguing
example,
the purpose. I'm just arguing.
Right. It's just, we need to clarify what it is
Yeah.
what you're saying. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Duly noted. Any other comments?
I just have a question, Nancy, about,
Mhm.
I think I saw, it's not on the screen right now, that a request by 3 members to hold a special meeting, and
Mhm.
that the timeline is 14 days from that request, emailed request. So within 14 days. Okay. So it's just I guess I'm trying to think within 14 days. So it can be, okay, 14 days max. It's just, okay. We'll have to, that's a tight timeline. So we'll just have to pay really close attention to that. So that's fine.
And I think we need to clarify too, that it would be special meetings, the board would be within 3 board members. So I think that
Okay. I
we're
didn't
not
know that.
talking about,
Okay.
so I
Yeah.
think we need to clarify that too. Let me make a
Got
note
it.
of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
3,
I thought it was
because,
just members.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I don't, Jeff felt like this section should just be taken out, and we would certainly entertain that, since, but I think the purpose would be if for some reason meetings got canceled or whatever, and somebody felt like they wanted to have something, or if there was an urgent situation that came up, it would give an opportunity to be able to set up a quick board meeting. But it would have to have the notice of the 7 days to let the public know, et cetera. So,
okay. All right. Thanks.
yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I like the
Okay.
idea. I think that's
Okay.
gonna take some stuff out of the main meeting so that the main
Mhm.
meeting can be more efficient. And this
I-
is safely ignored by most people.
Thank you. I think too that the question of, I know on the agenda for the board meeting that you guys are trying out on January 23rd, which I'm thrilled you're doing. There's a question of whether it'll be monthly or every other month, and we're suggesting monthly would be good, because on the off months where the NCAC general meetings aren't held, you can have a little more discussion of some of the committee work. And then on the other the months before a general meeting, you could focus on the agenda and some other things. So having them monthly allows some business to be done on a regular basis. So that's our recommendation. Okay, so thank you for that comment. Wyatt and I will go back and talk and come back next time with a little more notice.
Okay. And you have custody of that, so I won't be editing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
We will get it transferred to the proper format, Tom.
Well, I
for
mean, it
next
doesn't
time.
really, I mean, there's no proper format for a brand new section because we're not doing comparisons. So it's
Okay,
fine.
you're letting me off the hook with this one. Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure I'm in a position to let anybody off the hook, but go ahead.
Okay. And then we've got Article 9, amending the bylaws, which I think hopefully will be a nice quick one. Michael has a nice right up here, again in Word. So Michael, take it away.
Yes,
I'm going to try to expand it. But
yeah, the purpose, I don't need to read it, but the purpose of this particular article is to outline a process by which bylaws are proposed or enjoined or raised and so on. They can come from a number of sources. And this simply outlines what those sources are. And secondly, to assure that they are timely, inclusive, and transparent in how bylaws are handled, or at least proposals are handled, which is what we're doing already, but this just codifies that. And then talks about what do we do afterwards and deal with it. So it's pretty straightforward, and this is, there's nothing here that's unusual. I drew the language from a number of organizations and sets of bylaws that handle these sorts of things, and so it's a pretty normal and standard kind of activity.
I would make one suggestion on wording. Michael, I think it's a great piece, frankly, but I think I understand exactly what you're getting at, but in the section 1 where you say, and updated as needed, that's up to the membership, so it's not to the committee. So I
Oh,
would strike
yeah.
that out.
You're absolutely right. That's a good point. Maybe we better. Well, I think the part where it needs to be reviewed annually is necessary, but updated. I think what you're saying is that opens it up for a number of different interpretations. Which
Yeah, or misinterpretation for sure.
yeah. Yeah.
Do you
Oh,
think we
I
should
would,
just say reviewed annually by the subcommittee and we don't say anything about updates?
that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah,
appropriate.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
That's clear. Asking a question about this, is this, what relationship does this have with what currently exists?
It's down at the bottom. Changes from the current bylaws.
Oh,
Regular view broadens the source or the initiation of
Okay.
possibilities. It specifies that it does come to the committee, that it does
Okay.
not hang in the executive board or something of that sort. Clarifies the timing so that people members do have an expectation that it will be handled. And changes to a 2/3, which is a standard for Robert's Rules of Order rather than a simple majority. And the argument there is that bylaws are solid. They're there not to be changed on a regular basis, but to be
Okay.
a legal or quasi-legal document. And that because of that fact, it ought to be a supermajority rather than a simple majority to pass them.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So the proposal really would be to just do a wholesale replacement, text for text. Just
Correct.
strike everything out and put that in
Yes,
with the update of deleting the last phrase in
correct.
section
Right.
1.
That's correct.
So in
I'm
this
in
one,
favor of that.
in Article 6 or 7, or excuse me, on Article 4 on Article 6, you see the section numbers. Does that seem helpful to add to the
It
bylaws?
does to me. It does to me. Yeah. Because it separates concepts out from the rest of it.
Yeah, we already have subsections, and I'll just transliterate that into the format that we have
Okay,
already
yeah,
established,
that's
Robert's
fine.
Rules
Sounds good.
format. So that's not it. I'll have to put a title there for each one of them, but I think I could probably figure that
Yeah,
out.
okay.
Okay, so if we were to remove the part of section 1, put a period after subcommittee and remove the updated as needed, is this something that we feel like we could vote on today, or do we want to bring it back for next time?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay.
Okay, so
I sure am.
Okay.
okay, and I
Then
can't see
I
you,
move
Sarah,
that we,
Susan.
I move that we accept this proposal.
I second.
With the limitations noted.
Thank you.
I second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed Article 9 to replace the existing bylaws, amending the bylaws section with the removal of and updated as needed out of section 1 with editorial changes as necessary for numbering, etc. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Okay, we have another article approved for recommendation. When I say approved, for recommendation.
Wow.
So thank you. I'm going. What?
When housekeeping, I have been maintaining a draft copy. So as we update these, I'm going to update the baseline draft copy to correspond to what this new text is, as well as the other ones. In other words, we'll bring forward the baseline. That's what we had decided earlier. Is that still the decision?
I think that sounds great, as long as we still have the baseline that was approved in October as a reference point.
It's going to be a
able
reference.
to go
It's
back
going to be
So
a revision.
fabulous. Thank you.
It'll do change bars to indicate the new stuff.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate
Yep.
that. And thank you, Michael, for all your work on that. And I'm going to go ahead and defer Article 4 officers until the next meeting on February 2nd. But please look at it. It's in there, and I'm guessing Bill and I are going to have to revisit things because of the change on the communications area. So thank you, and I'm going to go back and I'm just going to bring up really fast the project plan summary here. So it's here. I think we're making good progress. We'll be bringing back next time let's see, Bill and Tom were working on Article 2. Have you guys made any progress, Tom?
We have not communicated. I have a suggested change and Bill made another change.
Okay.
We haven't, we could bring it forward for review, but we're certainly not ready to have it accepted. But
Right.
yeah,
So-
we're ready for a review.
Okay, so we could put it on the agenda for February
We could.
2nd?
We could.
Okay, thanks. And then Wyatt and I will be, or we have a lot more to look on Article 3, but we got good clarification today. And Article 4 will come next time. Article 5, Susan and I should have a draft next time. And we have a little bit of change to do to Article 6, but
7.
or do we? No,
6.
we actually did 6, didn't we?
We
Yeah.
did 6.
Luckily, we have a secretary, Michael, who's taking
Yes.
notes. Article 7, Tom and I will work on some more, and parliamentary authority, we're done. Amending the bylaws, we're done. Yay. And then Wyatt and Tom, you're going to wait till the very end to do Article 10, correct?
Yeah, because that tends
Okay.
to be the catch-all for things that don't fit anywhere else. We may wind up, if we keep it as a coordinator for the communications, that might be where the communications coordinator winds up.
Okay. So we are now, we have updates. So if there are no objections, I would like to extend the meeting to 11:50 to allow time for public comment. Is there any objection to that? Alex Clark raised his hand.
I don't.
Alice Patel.
raise my
Okay,
hand.
so
Sorry, Susan.
okay. So let me,
Sorry,
it was Sky. Sorry, there are 2 people with Alex Clark's name there. So let me, so I'm hearing no objection to extending the time. Thank you very much. And thank you all for hanging in there. I want to ask Bill real fast if he could give us a little history of the boundaries while he's here. Bill Bush.
Okay, thank you for giving me a chance to speak. I was an officer in the Nesquan Citizen Planning Advisory Committee, the predecessor of the CAC, and then eventually the CAC from 2013 to 2019. And the transition from the CPAC to the CAC occurred in 2013. It was partly a consequence of giving the local group the opportunity to address and advise the county on more issues than just planning, which had been the primary restriction of the CPAC. The first meeting that we had subsequent to that notice was the October 5th, 2013 meeting. And if you look at the agenda to that, in the mission statement, it describes the boundary of the Nesquan CAC as extending from the Little Nestucca River in the north and to the south to the southern boundary of Tillamook County. And the western boundary is fairly clear cut. You can't go too far out in the water. The eastern boundary has always been nebulous, and the assumption was just that it would extend to the extent where people were living. One of the things that sort of shows up in the Board of Commissioners order that establishes the CACs is that they are looking for inclusivity, as Sarah mentioned earlier, that we are trying to get as many people as possible to express their opinions and pass it on to the Board of Commissioners and the Department of Community Development. During that time, actually it was during the time of the CPAC, we did have issues come up that were outside the Nesquan area. there was a developer who wanted to build a resort on Cannery Hill, and he came to the meeting and made his presentation. He also similarly went to the Pacific City Woods CPAC and made a presentation. In 2017, I was a part of a group, essentially the officers, who revised the bylaws. And the boundary that we established at that time doesn't really match up with what was shown in the map. The boundary extends from Cannery Hill in the north to Slab Creek Road in the south. And in saying that it extends to Slab Creek Road, it isn't an east-west line. Slab Creek Road runs northwest to southeast. So it was assumed to run the length of the populated part of Slab Creek Road, which Rand tells me extends to about the upper bridge over Nesquin Creek. So looking at the what we proposed and was accepted as revisions to the bylaws, and the bylaws statement that I saw on the community development page that contains all the CPAC or CAC information. The northern boundary is still listed as Cannery Hill, which seems appropriate to serve as a division between us and Pacific City. And the southern boundary is Slab Creek Road. And just the final thing is that trying to restrict it to something less is essentially leaving out people who are out there, have interests, and also projects that potentially can affect that area that is greater than just what is shown or generally accepted as being the Nesquin area.
So when you say Nesquin area, you mean the official community boundary, urban
I
boundary?
think what you think of as the Nesquin area probably depends on the person. That for a long time, people in the village didn't think of South Beach as being part of Nesquin. So it depends on what your definition is.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, the idea is not to exclude people. The idea is to take in all voices. And also, there are issues like this resort that was proposed years ago that lies a little outside of the Nesquin community boundary, but it definitely would have an impact on the Nesquin community.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your comments, Bill. That's very helpful. I'm going to go to Liz, and then Guy, and then Tom Prohovich. So Liz. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm also taking care of my daughter today, so I might get interrupted. She's 2. So I just really want to emphasize the idea of including everyone in Nesquin who lives here in Nesquin. Alex and I lived on Slab Creek for 5 years and had the privilege of getting to know these Nesquin neighbors. And for those of you that haven't yet had the good fortune of knowing them well, I want to share that our Slab Creek neighbors are essential in keeping the heart of Nesquin alive. They have to be included. These neighbors were teachers and staff at the Nesquin Valley School from the very beginning and sent their own children there. These neighbors have helped make Nesquin Golf Course what it is. They have been volunteer paramedics, volunteer firefighters, volunteer EMTs for many years. These neighbors volunteer on countless boards and committees in our immediate community and at the county level. These neighbors have given and continue to give childcare to my husband and I, and without which I would not be able to provide healthcare for this community. I practice East Asian medicine at my clinic in Pacific City.
Okay, thank you so much.
And medics, these neighbors have raised countless children and saved countless lives. It must be pointed out that the way in which our Slab Creek neighbors give is entirely for the good of our community at large. It's selfless. It's not to protect their own businesses or their financial wealth or their property rights. Their involvement is completely in the spirit of making our community of Nesquin the wonderful and special place that it is. And we cannot exclude them from voting and being active members.
Okay, thank you so much for your input, Liz, and thank you for attending. I want to thank everybody who has attended today. It's wonderful that people are caring this much, and we really appreciate that. So I think I said Guy next.
Yes, first I want to apologize to the committee when I jumped in late to the meeting and assumed it was public comment time by the agenda and clearly made a mistake. So I apologize for interrupting the committee's work with my comment. I was going to speak to much of what Bill Bush had to say about what the CAC was at that time. Certainly after we kind of redid our bylaws, it was all about inclusivity. And to add one more thing besides the resort of Cannery Hill, we also had some requests from people in the Cascade Head Ranch that fall within Tillamook County for issues that were there. So the river to the river actually was kind of a general thing. You know, I think, and just an observation, certainly voting was an issue on several things that we did. We had a couple of very contentious issues and some hard votes, upwards of 100 people at CAC meetings. And our general thing was if you came to the meeting and you had any kind of stake in the Nescoin broad area, then you could vote. There was a time, but it was a physical presence that determined voting. There was a time when it was proposed, and I think we did it for officers or something like that. Bill may remember more than I, where you had to attend the previous meeting to vote at the next meeting. That was the kind of one restriction we were thinking of. But clearly the kind of electronic age has opened up our meetings and made it more complicated as to who can vote, how many people can vote. I mean, the comment about, you know, a corporation owns a thing, could we have all the shareholders vote? I mean, they could, theoretically, everybody could attend. So I appreciate the work of the committee in trying to come up with this, and know that anytime we bring a recommendation, whether it's to the county, to the feds, to the state, to ODOT, whatever it is, the bylaws, and I have not gone through the revision of the bylaws enough to know that whenever we report on a vote, we report all positions that were taken and how they're represented by percentage or numbers. So I mean, I know the county is going to require that. Certainly when we come with the community plan, they're going to want to see how many people participated, how many people voted for a particular area or something, whatever it is. So we have to share. I think part of our responsibility is to share how the whole community thinks on any particular issue, not just 51-49. We were not going to tell what the 49 said. So that's just a thought. Again, I apologize for interrupting your meeting earlier. Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks.
well, thank you for that input, and appreciate it. And that's a good consideration to actually talk about how votes are presented when we get, Susan and I will talk about that on the meetings when we get to that next week. Can you remember, Susan? I'll make a note too. Thank you. Tom Verhovich.
Yeah, I'm going to make this much quicker than my last presentation. Sarah, I'm glad you're here.
We always welcome that you're coming, Tom.
Sarah, I'm glad you're here, and I want to say to you publicly what I've said to the committee and the few people that have attended in the past, and to Mark and to Alex Clark. This committee is doing an exceptional job. The level of detail, the level of transparency, the level of democratic input is really almost unparalleled in my history in community organizations. So I wanted to say that at the beginning. Secondly, if you really want to know what I think, you can listen to my public comment at the last meeting, which is I was horrified to find out when I looked at it again this morning, lasted 7.5 minutes. And to thank Nancy and the rest of the committee for their forbearance and patience. So the most important point is, Sarah brought up today, there is a difference between participation and voting. And as I said in all of my public comments, that's the most important thing to me. And I think it's the fundamental thing. Participation, if you can figure out a way to do it, should be as inclusive and as expansive as possible. The boundaries of the community should be as expansive as possible. Anybody that wants to participate should be able to participate. Voting to me is more complicated because you can say one person, one vote, and you can say that you want to increase inclusivity. But if you permit people that have properties where there are 12 people or 30 people to have 12 or 30 votes, and they're typically going to be non-residents, then you're going to end up ultimately excluding others. And that's something, however you come down on that, that's something you need to think about, because you know, the one thing I'll say about this is that you can establish any voting rule you want to, as I said last time, subject to constitutional or statutory challenge, which I'm not even sure would apply here, but you can set up any one you want to. So to me, there needs to be a compromise. If the non-residents, and I think Nancy sort of alluded to this in the last meeting as a possibility. If the non-residents' concern is there could be one property that, or a number of properties that have 30 votes or 20 votes, if you let everybody vote. And if the non-residents' concern is that if they only get one vote and residents get, on average, 2 per household, that's not fair. Compromise on something like every property gets 2 votes. Something like that, you know, it might be 3 or I'm not going to argue for 3 or 4. I'm not sure I'm going to argue for more than 1, but I think I could support something like 2 as a fair balance, a reasonable balance in voting going forward. But again, if you really want to listen to what I think, and I doubt that you do, you can hear my 7.5-minute disquisition in the last meeting. And I really thank Nancy for letting me talk that long. I wouldn't have.
Your comments are always valuable. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to, I also want to mention, because some of the people weren't here at the very beginning, that our plan is to go forward and have feedback meetings where people can more freely talk throughout the entire meetings for each of these articles too. So Roger, I think, or excuse me, yes, Roger's next. And then let's see, Guy, you put your hand down, and then Hillary, and then Mark. Okay.
Well, I obviously harped many times about the boundary and the legality of the boundary. I think the obvious solution would be if we could change the legal boundary of Nescoin to be as inclusive as you want it to. Unfortunately, the legal boundary we're stuck with is the one that's on the map. And I don't see how anyone's concerned about the eastern and west boundary. I think the map is pretty obvious what the boundary is. The most important thing that the CAC does is land use issues. And I can't think of anything less democratic than having someone vote on land use issues in a district for which they don't even live. That would be like me voting for land use issues and someone up in Tillamook, or at least advising the commission on that. So if it's any way possible, I think that the boundaries, the official boundaries, should be changed, especially now with the community development plan coming up. That, as if I'm understanding correctly, applies only to the official boundary that we have at this time. And again, I'm absolutely shocked, but I do have to agree with Tom on the voting issue. It was proposed earlier that residents would have each have a vote. For instance, a spouse and the husband would have a vote, or I'm sorry, man and wife would have a vote, whereas a homeowner would only have 1 vote. I think for those, the official residence is one thing. I know that I spent an awful lot more time in Nescoin than a lot of people who have their official residence there, even though mine is not there. And it is a community I'm involved with and one that I basically live in. And for those of us that are homeowners within this area and do not live here, this is the one opportunity that we have to have our voice heard, at least to the county commissioners. since we are unable to vote here. So I think it's kind of unfair to give a resident more voting power than a non-resident homeowner. That's my only comment for today, and thank you for the time.
Okay. Thank you so much, Roger. I appreciate your input. And we're now at 11:49, so I really want to hear everybody's comments. I would like to, if there are no objections, go to noon. And we will make every effort to not do this in the future. Okay, Hillary.
Hey, thank you guys so much today. The bylaws committee is working really hard. I can tell you guys are all bringing your A game, so I appreciate that. I know it's not an easy task. I just wanted to give a little bit of quick feedback. I'll try to keep it short. Maybe we could have public comment limited in the future, like 2 or 3 minutes. That might help us all get our words in without running out of time. So first, I like the idea of the member definition being more inclusive and then having a separate voting definition. And that kind of leads into votes should be equally weighed among all properties so that you don't have, you know, one home could have 12 votes and one home could have 1 vote. Whether I think the factor of residents or non-resident seasonal homeowners shouldn't be a factor. I think that's divisive unnecessarily. And I think we're kind of like one team, one dream with Nescoin. And I'd like to see us come together and recognize that all of our voices matter equally, whether we live there full time or not. I would like to see a quorum required among the total number of eligible properties within the NCAC boundary for any recommendation that's officially made to the county. And a way to reach that would be to increase how votes are accepted, because right now you have to be at, you know, like the random Saturday morning meeting in order to have a vote. And I would like to see some sort of electronic like survey via, whether it's the mail or online, but some way so that you can reach more people to have their votes, so that you don't have to be present at the actual meeting, but you can register in advance, be screened, and have your vote count so that you're heard when you're making recommendations to the county. So I think that's it, but thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Hillary, and thank you for attending again. Mark and then Liz, and then I think we'll end. You're muted, Mark.
Mine's just a real quick comment. You know, it's been spoken prior to me saying this, but I'm very, very grateful to the Bylaws Committee. You are doing really, in my opinion, very, very good work, very important work, and you're hearing all sides. You're welcoming comments. You're processing those. And I just think it's great that we have so many people at the meeting today, and that they're sharing comments for you know, options, possible changes. I think it's wonderful. So so thank you very much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. And I just want to share again, it's just fabulous seeing all of you here, and I can't thank the committee enough for all of your work as well. I mean, everybody on the committee is pulling a lot of weight and time and thought. So thank you. Liz.
Hi, sorry, I got emotional and forgot another point I wanted to make about how many votes per property or corporation. And I agree it has to be limited to 1 or absolute maximum 2 per property if you're not a resident. And I think the distinction between resident and non-resident is important, not in a divisive way. Like, trust me, I think a lot of us wish that all non-residents would move here and like be a more full part of the community. We'd welcome you. But there's a distinction because the matters that are voted on affect residents in our everyday life in ways that are big and small, and even the small ways are big in many ways. So it's nuanced and needs to be thought about more. And I hope we can come to an agreement on keeping votes limited to 1 or absolute maximum 2 if people aren't residents. And again, not to be divisive, like we wish more of you would move here full time, but it's I don't know how to sum up how like this all affects our everyday life if we choose to make this our one and only home. And that has to be given a lot of thought to.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I also want to thank Sarah for coming and answering a lot of our questions. Thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time. I know it's been a busy time with all the weather. Thank you all. Meeting adjourned
I have
at,
one question for
oh.
the committee. If
Oh,
I could
okay.
just
Mhm.
since there's a lot of discussion about borders being different than what was in the map, should I add back some of the maps in Article 3 discussion so that
That would
we
be
can use it
helpful,
for
Tom.
reference? Okay, I'll add back some of the maps that got deleted because we considered a lot of different borders. So we will unboil the set.
Okay, I think a lot of it will depend. It'll be really helpful when Sarah does her actual mapping. Goodness, the GIS Sarah. We'll have to nickname you, Sarah. That'll help too in showing where our members are currently located, and help set the map too. So thank you. I wouldn't have to spend a lot of time, Tom, redoing maps until
No, I'm not going to redo
or
them. I'm
not
just gonna-
redoing them, but reinserting them until we have that data.
It'll
I
take
think
me
that'll
2
determine a
minutes.
lot of it. And again, we will be doing a lot more opportunities for feedback, but thank you all so much for coming. And our next meeting is on February 2nd at 9:30. And again, it will be a full agenda. So we will try to post early. Thank you all so much, and meeting adjourned at 11:55. And I'm going to stop recording if I can figure out where to do that.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody who commented. Appreciate it.
Good meeting.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.